The coffee cup shattered against the wall, hot liquid dripping down my face as my stepdaughter-in-law's voice cut through the lawyer's office like a knife. "Hope you're having fun living in the streets with the beggars," she screamed. But when the lawyer read that first sentence of the will, their victory dance turned into complete silence. What happened next left them begging on their knees, but by then it was way too late. I'm glad you're here with me today. Stay until the very end of my story and drop a comment telling me which state you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across our beautiful country. I never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office at 64 years old, watching my dead husband's family tear apart everything I thought I knew about my life. The walls were lined with law books that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades, and the air conditioning hummed with an efficiency that made the room feel sterile and cold. But there I was on May 16th, 2024, clutching my purse so tight my knuckles had gone white, while my stepson Garrett and his wife Peyton sat across from me like they owned the world. My husband Marcus had been gone for exactly 2 months. 2 months since I held his hand in that hospital bed while he took his last breath on March 15th, whispering words of love that I'll carry with me forever. 2 months since the funeral where Peyton wore red lipstick and kept checking her phone during the service, showing more interest in her social media than in saying goodbye to the man who had welcomed her into his family. 2 months since I'd become a widow in a family that never truly accepted me, despite 8 years of trying to build bridges that seemed to crumble every time I approached them. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment, with undertones of coffee that had been brewing too long. "Mr. Brennan adjusted his glasses nervously, shuffling through papers with the careful precision of a man who'd delivered bad news before. His desk was massive, made of mahogany that probably cost more than my car, and it felt like a fortress wall between us. The afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the Persian rug that probably had more value than most people's annual salaries. I was sitting on the losing side of what felt like an impending battle. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, his voice carrying the weight of formality that lawyers seemed to perfect in law school, "I apologize for the extended delay in scheduling this meeting. Probate proceedings typically take several months, but your husband's detailed estate planning and meticulous record-keeping helped expedite the process significantly." Garrett leaned forward in his chair, his 38-year-old frame radiating impatience. He had inherited his father's dark hair, but none of Marcus's gentle nature. Emma and Tyler, his children from his marriage to Sarah, who had died in a car accident 5 years earlier, deserved so much better than the chaos he and Peyton were creating. "Just get on with it already. We all know Dad left everything to me. I'm his only child, so obviously I'm the sole heir." Peyton nodded enthusiastically, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the office windows. She wore a designer dress in emerald green that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months, complete with matching jewelry that sparkled when she moved her hands. Her makeup was flawless, applied with the precision of someone who spent considerable time and money on her appearance. "We've already started looking at houses in Riverside Estates," she announced with barely contained excitement. "This inheritance is going to change everything for our family. We're thinking of getting Emma into private school, maybe taking that European vacation we've always dreamed about." I sat quietly in my funeral dress, the same black outfit I'd worn to Marcus's service 10 weeks earlier. It was the nicest thing I owned, purchased from a discount store downtown where I'd shopped for years, trying to stretch every dollar Marcus and I earned. The fabric was polyester blend, practical and washable, nothing like the silk and cashmere that Peyton favored. For 8 years, I'd been Marcus's wife, but I'd always felt like an unwelcome guest in his family story, invited to dinner but never truly welcomed at the table. "Well," Mr. Brennan said slowly, removing his glasses to clean them, "that's exactly what I need to address today." He opened a thick manila folder and pulled out several official documents sealed with court stamps. "Mrs. Holloway, Were you aware that your husband owned significant assets beyond the family home? Confusion washed over me like cold water. I don't understand. Marcus worked at Murphy's Auto Parts for 23 years. We lived on his salary and my part-time library job. What other assets could there be? See, that's the thing nobody understood about Marcus and me. We'd always lived simply, because that's how Marcus wanted it. He'd grown up poor in a house with 7 siblings, wearing hand-me-down clothes and eating beans for dinner 4 nights a week. Even after he started making good money, he never felt comfortable showing off wealth. But I thought his good money meant maybe 60 or 70,000 a year, not millions. Garrett laughed, a harsh sound that made my stomach clench. Nice try, Dottie. You're not getting a single penny that belonged to my father. You were only married for 8 years. I'm his blood, his real family. That's when Peyton stood up and grabbed her coffee cup. I should have seen the rage building in her perfectly made-up face, but I was too focused on Mr. Brennan's words to notice the storm brewing. You gold-digging witch, she screamed, her voice echoing off the office walls. She hurled that scalding coffee directly at my face. The ceramic cup exploded against the wall behind me, sending fragments across the expensive carpet. Coffee dripped down my cheek and soaked into my dress, burning my skin. Hope you're having fun living in the streets with the beggars, because that's exactly where you belong. Mr. Brennan jumped to his feet, his chair rolling backward. Mrs. Holloway, that behavior is completely unacceptable in my office. But Peyton wasn't finished. Her face was flushed with anger, her hands shaking as she pointed at me. She married my father-in-law for his money, and now she thinks she can waltz in here and take what belongs to Garrett's children. Well, guess what, Dottie? You're about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong family. I wiped coffee from my face with a tissue from my purse, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I never asked for anything, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I just want to understand what Marcus left behind. What he left behind, Garrett said, standing up to tower over me with his 6-foot frame, belongs to me. Every single penny, every piece of property, everything. You get absolutely nothing. That's when Mr. Brennan cleared his throat and said the words that changed everything forever. Actually, Mr. Holloway, that's not quite accurate according to the legal documents. He put his glasses back on and picked up the will. The will specifically states that all assets are to be divided equally between you and Mrs. Dorothy Holloway. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that thick Persian carpet. The air conditioning hummed in the background like a distant whisper. What? Peyton's voice came out as barely a whisper, her face draining of color. Mr. Brennan continued reading from the official document. Furthermore, the will reveals that Mr. Marcus Holloway owned 8 rental properties throughout the city, valued at approximately $1.4 million. He maintained a diversified investment portfolio worth approximately $1.2 million. Additionally, he had been the silent partner in Murphy's Auto Parts since 1998. When the business was sold to AutoZone in 2019 for $5.25 million, your father's 40% partnership share netted him $2.1 million. I felt like the world was spinning around me. Marcus had worked at that auto parts store for over 20 years, but I'd never known he owned part of it. When people asked about his job, he'd always just said he was an employee and changed the subject. That's impossible, Garrett said, his face turning red as a tomato. My dad worked at an auto parts store his whole life. He didn't own properties or have investments. He drove a 15-year-old pickup truck. Actually, Mr. Brennan said, pulling out more papers from his folder, your father began investing in rental properties in 1995, 3 years before he became a silent partner in Murphy's Auto Parts. When the business was sold to the national chain 5 years ago, your father's 40% share was worth $2.1 million. He's been living off the investment income and rental profits ever since. Peyton grabbed the papers from the lawyer's hands with desperate fingers. This can't be real. Garrett, tell him this documentation is fake. This has to be some kind of mistake. But Garrett was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, his mouth hanging open. You knew, he said slowly, accusation dripping from every word. You had to know about all the money. I didn't know anything. I protested, and it was the absolute truth. Marcus never told me about any investments or business partnerships. I thought we were just getting by like every other middle-class family in town. Mr. Brennan looked uncomfortable, loosening his tie. Mrs. Holloway, there's more information your husband wanted revealed. He left detailed instructions about how he wanted his wealth disclosed. He specifically requested that you be informed of your inheritance in the presence of his son, because... He paused, consulting his notes carefully. Because he wanted to observe how his family would treat you when they believed you had nothing to inherit. The words hit the room like a bomb exploding. He was testing us? Garrett asked, his voice barely audible, all the fight draining out of him. According to his detailed letters, yes. Mr. Holloway was deeply concerned about how his son and daughter-in-law had been treating his wife over the years. He wanted their true character revealed before any discussion of inheritance details took place. I thought back through the past 8 years like pages flipping in a photo album. All the times Garrett had made snide comments about me being a replacement for his mother. All the times Peyton had forgotten to invite me to family gatherings, birthday parties, and holiday celebrations. All the times they'd acted like I was some kind of burden Marcus had to tolerate. And Marcus had seen it all, quietly watching and taking notes. So, what does this mean exactly? I asked, my voice barely working through the shock. So, what does this mean exactly? I asked, my voice barely working through the shock. Mr. Brennan smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. It means, Mrs. Holloway, that you've just inherited approximately $2.45 million in assets. Your husband was very specific about the division. The family home, valued at approximately $200,000, goes to you outright. The remaining $4.7 million in assets, the rental properties, investments, and business sale proceeds, are to be divided equally between you and your stepson. This gives you $2.45 million total, while Garrett receives $2.35 million. Peyton started hyperventilating, gasping for air like a fish out of water. This isn't happening. This isn't real. Garrett, do something. Call someone. There has to be a legal way to challenge this. But Garrett looked like he'd been hit by a freight train. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he gripped the arms of his chair. Dottie, oh God, what have we done? I sat there in that lawyer's office, coffee still drying on my dress, trying to process what I'd just learned. My husband had been worth over $3.5 million. My husband had been secretly testing his family's character. And my husband had just made me one of the wealthiest women in our small town. But the story was just getting started. Over the next few days, I met with Patricia Williams, a financial advisor that Mr. Brennan recommended. Her office was located in the downtown business district, occupying the top floor of a gleaming glass building that reflected the courthouse square below. Patricia was a distinguished woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She specialized in helping people manage sudden wealth, lottery winners, inheritance recipients, and people whose lives had been turned upside down by unexpected financial windfalls. Mrs. Holloway, she said as we sat in her conference room on May 20th, surrounded by charts and investment documents that looked like they'd been prepared by a team of financial experts, your husband was extremely intelligent about his financial decisions. Since you inherited half of the rental properties, they generate approximately $4,000 in monthly income for you. Combined with your share of the diversified investment portfolio, you're looking at roughly $6,000 in monthly passive income, plus you own your home completely free and clear. I nearly choked on my coffee, an expensive blend that Patricia had served in delicate china cups. $6,000 a month? Marcus and I had been living on about $4,000 a month total, including both our salaries and carefully managing every expense. Why did he live so simply if he had access to all this money? I asked, genuinely bewildered by the revelation that my husband had been secretly wealthy while we clipped coupons and shopped at discount stores. Patricia smiled warmly, her expression conveying both understanding and sympathy. According to his detailed notes, which he updated regularly over the years, he wanted to make absolutely sure you married him for love, not financial security. He also wanted to observe how his family would treat you if they thought you were just an ordinary middle-class widow with no substantial inheritance coming your way. Well, now I know exactly what they think of me, I said bitterly, unconsciously touching the spot on my cheek where the coffee had burned, leaving a mark that had finally faded but left an emotional scar that would last much longer. Mrs. Holloway, what would you like to do with these assets? We can keep everything exactly as is, or we can make some strategic changes to maximize your security and income. I thought about Peyton's face when she threw that coffee at me. I thought about Garrett calling me a gold digger. I thought about 8 long years of being treated like an outsider in my own family, enduring subtle insults and deliberate exclusions. I want to make some purchases, I said firmly, starting with detailed information about where Garrett and Peyton currently live. Patricia was extremely thorough in her research capabilities, utilizing resources and databases that I never knew existed. By May 25th, I had a complete file on Garrett and Peyton's living situation sitting on my kitchen table, complete with credit reports, employment history, and even details about their spending habits. They were renting a 4-bedroom house on Maple Street for $2,200 a month from Hamilton Property Management. The house was in a decent neighborhood with mature oak trees lining the streets and well-maintained sidewalks where children rode bicycles and neighbors knew each other's names. They'd been late on rent 4 times in the past year and were currently 6 weeks behind on their April payment, despite both having steady employment. The property was managed by Hamilton Property Management, a local company that handled about 50 rental properties in the area, and the actual owner was an elderly man named Robert Chen who lived in Florida and was growing increasingly frustrated with dealing with problematic tenants from 2,000 miles away. But real estate transactions aren't instantaneous, like they show in movies. You can't just walk into an office with cash and walk out with keys. Real estate requires time, paperwork, inspections, title searches, and extensive legal documentation. So I had to be strategic and patient about my approach. First, I worked with Patricia to liquidate some of Marcus's stock investments. She helped me convert approximately $400,000 into liquid cash over the course of 3 weeks, maintaining the rest in diversified investments for long-term financial security and growth. Then I started making strategic phone calls. On April 25th, I contacted Hamilton Property Management directly. I explained that I was interested in purchasing investment properties in the area and asked if they knew of any owners looking to sell. Funny you should ask, the agent said, sounding tired. We manage a property on Maple Street where the tenants are consistently behind on rent payments. Mr. Chen's been talking about selling because he's tired of dealing with problem renters from 2,000 miles away. Perfect. What's his asking price? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He's looking for $185,000. It's a nice 4-bedroom house in good condition, but like I said, the current tenants have been problematic with late payments and property maintenance issues. I made a cash offer that same afternoon. No financing contingencies, no lengthy inspection periods, expedited closing in 5 weeks. Mr. Chen accepted immediately. Apparently dealing with Garrett and Peyton's late rent payments and excuses from Florida had been a complete nightmare for him. While that purchase was moving through the legal system, I started gathering more detailed information about Garrett and Peyton's daily lives. Patricia helped me research where they worked, where their children attended school, and what their overall financial situation looked like. Peyton worked part-time at a boutique called Elegant Expressions downtown, making about $800 a month selling overpriced clothes to women with more money than sense. Garrett worked for a small construction company called Bradley Brothers and made decent money when he actually showed up, but he'd been missing work frequently due to what he called personal issues. Emma and Tyler, Garrett's children from his first marriage, attended the local public school and participated in an after-school program at the YMCA. They were genuinely good kids who deserved better than the chaos and instability their parents were creating through their poor financial decisions. I started making careful plans. But first, I had to deal with the desperate phone calls. Starting on May 17th, the day after the will reading, Peyton called me 14 times in 3 days. I let every single call go to voicemail, listening to increasingly frantic messages where she alternated between fake apologies and thinly veiled threats. Garrett showed up at my front door on May 19th, looking like he hadn't slept since the lawyer meeting. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, and he had dark circles under his eyes. "Dottie, please, we desperately need to talk," he said when I opened the door just wide enough to see him. "I know we haven't always gotten along perfectly, but we're family now." "Are we?" I asked calmly. "Because 3 days ago, your wife threw scalding coffee at my face and told me I belonged in the streets with beggars." His face crumpled like a deflated balloon. She was upset about Dad's death. We both were. The grief hit us hard, and we weren't thinking clearly about anything. Upset enough to assault me in a lawyer's office? Look, I'm sorry, okay? We're both incredibly sorry about what happened. But think about what Dad would have wanted. He'd want his family to stick together during difficult times like this. I almost laughed out loud. Your father spent his final years carefully observing how you treated me, Garrett. He was so disappointed in your behavior that he set up an elaborate test to see if you'd show any basic human kindness to his widow. You failed that test spectacularly. But we can fix this situation, he said desperately, his voice cracking. We can be a real family now. Peyton's already planning a big family dinner for next weekend. You could help us catch up on our bills, maybe help with the kids' college funds. And there it was. Less than a week after throwing coffee at me, they were already mentally spending my inheritance money. I don't think so, I said firmly, and started to close the door. Wait. He stuck his foot in the doorway like a desperate salesman. Dottie, please. We've got 2 children to think about. Emma's only 14 and Tyler's 16. They need stability. They need family support. Where was that concern for family when your wife was screaming at me and calling me names? That was a huge mistake. A terrible mistake that we'll regret forever. But we can move past it if we work together. I looked at this man who had never once invited me to his children's school events, never once included me in holiday planning, never once treated me like anything more than an inconvenience his father had to tolerate. Garrett, I said quietly, your father left me half of everything because he knew exactly who you and Peyton really are underneath the surface. He watched you treat me poorly for 8 years, and he made his decision accordingly. I'm going to honor his wishes completely. I closed the door and heard him calling my name through the wood, but I didn't open it again. On May 9th, I officially became the legal owner of 847 Maple Street. The same day, I had Hamilton Property Management serve Garrett and Peyton with a formal notice to pay or quit. They owed $5,200 in back rent and had exactly 5 days to pay in full or face immediate eviction proceedings. Garrett called me that afternoon, his voice shaking. Dottie, something really strange is happening. Our landlord is suddenly demanding all our back rent immediately, and they're threatening to evict us. We think maybe there's been some kind of administrative mistake. That sounds terrible, I said sympathetically. How much do you owe? About $5,000. We've been struggling financially since Dad died, and we got a little behind on payments. 5,200, actually, but I didn't correct his minimization. That's quite a lot of money, Garrett. I know. But Dottie, you've got all that inheritance money now. You could help us out just this once. We'll pay you back as soon as we get back on our feet, I promise. Pay me back with what income? You're already behind on your current expenses. Well, maybe you could talk to our landlord directly. Explain our situation. Maybe they'd work with us if they knew we had family support and financial backing. I almost laughed out loud. You want me to ask your landlord to give you special treatment? You could offer to guarantee our rent payments or something. Show them that we've got someone reliable financially backing us up. Garrett, for weeks ago your wife threw scalding coffee at my face and told me I belonged in the streets. Now you want me to financially guarantee your housing. There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Dottie, please. We've got innocent children to think about. You should have thought about your children before you treated me like garbage for 8 years. But we've apologized. We've said we're sorry multiple times. No, you've said words. There's a significant difference between being genuinely sorry and facing real consequences for your actions. On June 30th, 30 days later, Garrett and Peyton were officially evicted from their house. I drove by around 2 p.m. and saw them loading boxes into a rented truck while their neighbors watched from their front yards with a mixture of curiosity and pity. The sheriff was there to ensure they left peacefully and completely. Emma and Tyler sat on the front steps, looking confused and scared. They were innocent victims in all this chaos, and seeing them upset made my heart ache. But sometimes children have to learn difficult lessons from their parents' poor choices and consequences. As I sat in my car watching them pack their belongings, Garrett spotted me and ran over frantically. Dottie, he called out, breathing hard. Thank God you're here. We desperately need your help. They forced us to leave, and we don't have anywhere to go tonight. I rolled down my window. Where are you planning to stay? We found a cheap motel across town. It's not great, but it's all we can afford right now with our credit problems and financial situation. That doesn't sound suitable for children. It's not, but we don't have any other choice. Unless... He looked at me hopefully, desperation written across his face. Unless you know someone who might rent to us. Maybe someone who'd understand our situation and be willing to work with us. I pretended to think about it carefully. Actually, I might know someone. Let me make some phone calls over the next few days and see what I can find. Really? That would be absolutely amazing. But Garrett, I need you to understand something very clearly. If I help you find housing, it's going to be because of Emma and Tyler, not because of you and Peyton. Any landlord I recommend is going to expect you to pay your rent on time and treat the property with complete respect. Of course, we've learned our lesson. We'll be model tenants, I promise. I drove away, leaving them to finish packing their life into boxes. Over the next week, I let them stay in that cheap motel while I made my next strategic move. I used some of my liquid cash to purchase a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood for $168,000. It needed some cosmetic work, but it was structurally sound and would be perfect for a family with children. I had the house professionally cleaned, painted in neutral colors, and furnished with basic but comfortable items. Nothing fancy or expensive, but clean and functional for daily living. On July 8th, I called Garrett with my good news. I found you a place, I said. It's a 3-bedroom house, and the owner is willing to work with you despite your credit issues and eviction history. That's incredible. Where is it located? I gave him the address. The rent is $1,800 a month, which includes water and trash pickup. You'll be responsible for electricity and gas utilities. $1,800? That's actually less than we were paying before. The owner understands that you're going through a difficult financial time. But Garrett, there are very strict conditions attached to this arrangement. What kind of conditions? First, rent is due on the 1st of every month. Late fees start accumulating on the 2nd. If you're more than 10 days late, you're out immediately. That's completely fair. Second, you and Peyton both need to secure full-time employment within 30 days. No more part-time retail work for Peyton and no more missing work for you. We can definitely do that. Third, Emma and Tyler will continue attending their current school, but they'll also start participating in a youth program at the community center. They need stability and positive role models in their lives. Sure, whatever you think is best for them. And fourth, if either you or Peyton treats me with disrespect again, the rental agreement is terminated immediately. You'll have 24 hours to find somewhere else to live. Dottie, we would never. You already did, Garrett. Your wife threw coffee at me and called me degrading names. You tried to manipulate me into giving you money. This is your second chance, and it's the only one you'll ever get. That afternoon, I met Garrett and Peyton at the house. When they saw the clean, furnished home, Peyton actually started crying. "It's beautiful," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Thank you so much for helping us find this place." I handed Garrett the lease agreement. Read everything carefully before you sign. All the conditions I mentioned are spelled out in legal detail. As Garrett read through the paperwork, his face gradually went pale. "Dottie, this says the landlord is D. Morrison. That's not your name. Morrison is my maiden name. I use it for all business purposes." Peyton looked confused. Business purposes? I own several investment properties now. It's easier to keep my personal and business dealings completely separate. You own this house? Garrett asked slowly, the reality sinking in. I own this house. The truth was starting to dawn on them. They were going to be renting from me. So you're our landlord? Peyton whispered. I'm your landlord. Garrett set down the lease agreement. Dottie, I don't know if this is a good idea. What if we have problems? What if something goes wrong between us? Then you'll deal with those problems the same way any tenant deals with problems. You'll follow the lease agreement and treat the property with respect. But your family?
No, Garrett.
I'm your landlord. If you want me to be family, you'll have to earn that privilege over time through your actions, not your words. Peyton spoke up nervously. What if we can't afford the rent? What if one of us loses our job? Then you'll find a way to make it work, just like every other renter in America. I'm giving you an affordable place to live and a fresh start. What you do with that opportunity is entirely up to you. They signed the lease that day. Over the next 7 months, I watched Garrett and Peyton very carefully through various sources. They both found full-time employment, though it took Peyton 6 weeks, and she had to settle for working at a chain restaurant instead of the boutique she preferred. They paid their rent on time for the first 4 months. Emma and Tyler started attending the community center program and seemed to be thriving with the structure and positive influences. But I also heard things through our small town's inevitable grapevine. In August 2024, I learned that Peyton had been complaining to her coworkers about having to kiss up to the old witch to keep their housing stable. In September, Garrett told his construction buddies that living in Dottie's charity house was embarrassing and that he couldn't wait to save enough money to move somewhere else where they could have real independence. In October, I overheard Peyton on her phone outside the grocery store telling someone that I was holding their housing over their heads and that it wasn't fair for a landlord to have so much control over their lives. They were still the same people they'd always been. They were just better at hiding their true feelings now. So I decided to test their character one more time. In November 2024, I had Patricia research their current financial situation thoroughly. Despite both working full-time jobs, they were still living paycheck to paycheck. They'd bought new clothes, a newer car, and were eating out several times a week instead of saving money for their future. On November 20th, I stopped by the house for a routine inspection, as allowed by their lease agreement. The house was clean and well-maintained, which was encouraging. But I also noticed several things that concerned me about their attitude. They'd hung family photos throughout the house, but none of them included me. They'd hosted several family dinners and birthday parties based on the decorations still visible in the trash, but I'd never been invited to any of them. When I knocked on the door, Emma answered with a genuine smile. "Grandma Dottie, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for property inspection, sweetheart. Is your mom or dad home?" Peyton came to the door, and her smile looked forced and uncomfortable. "We weren't expecting you today. It's in your lease agreement. I can inspect the property with 24-hour notice, and I left a voicemail message yesterday." "Oh, right. Please come in." As I walked through the house, I asked casual questions about how things were progressing. "We're doing great," Peyton said automatically. "The kids love their new school program, and Garrett's really enjoying his job." "What about you? How's the restaurant work treating you?" "It's fine. Different from what I'm used to, but the tips are actually pretty good on busy nights." "Are you managing to save money for your own place?" Peyton's smile flickered slightly. "We're trying to. It's harder than we thought to save money when you're supporting a family of 4. I nodded sympathetically. "I'm sure it is challenging. By the way, I wanted to let you know that I'll be raising the rent starting in January." The color drained completely from her face. "Raising it? By how much?" "Market rate for this area is about $2,400 a month. I'll be adjusting your rent to $2,200, which is still below market value. But that's $400 more than we're paying now. It's still a good deal, Peyton. And it's been 7 months since you moved in. I think you've had enough time to get established financially." Garrett came home while we were talking and immediately tensed up when he saw me standing in his living room. "Dottie, what's going on here?" I was just explaining to Peyton about the rent increase starting in January. "Rent increase?
You can't do that."
"We have a signed lease." I pulled out my copy of their lease agreement. Actually, if you read Section 12 carefully, you'll see that rent can be adjusted annually with 60 days written notice. I'm giving you more notice than legally required. Garrett grabbed the lease and read through it frantically. His face fell when he found the clause clearly stated in black and white. "This is ridiculous," he said angrily. "We can't afford an extra $400 a month. Then you'll need to increase your income or find more affordable housing elsewhere." "More affordable housing? Do you know how hard it was to find this place with our credit history?" "I imagine it was very difficult, given your eviction record and financial problems." Peyton started crying, real tears this time. "Please, Dorothy. We're trying so hard to get back on our feet. Can't you give us more time to save money?" I looked at these two people who had learned to say the right words, but hadn't actually changed their fundamental character. "I'll tell you what," I said. "I'll keep your rent at $1,800 if you can do one simple thing." "What?" they both asked eagerly. "Invite me to Christmas dinner." They stared at me in confusion. "That's it?" Garrett asked suspiciously. "That's it. Include me in one family holiday. Show me that I'm actually part of this family instead of just the landlord you have to tolerate." Garrett and Peyton looked at each other. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, calculating the cost savings. "Of course," Peyton said finally. "We'd love to have you for Christmas dinner." "Wonderful. I'll bring the dessert." But I could tell from their expressions that they didn't really want me there. They were only agreeing because it would save them money. Christmas dinner was on December 25th, 2024. I arrived at 2 p.m. with a homemade apple pie and a bag of presents for Emma and Tyler. The dinner was awkward and forced. Garrett and Peyton were polite but cold, including me in conversations only when absolutely necessary. Emma and Tyler were genuinely happy to see me, which made the whole situation even more uncomfortable for everyone. After dinner, while the kids were playing with their new toys, I sat in the living room with Garrett and Peyton. "Thank you for including me today," I said. "Of course," Peyton replied automatically. "We're glad you could come." But I could see the resentment burning in their eyes. They didn't want me there. They were only tolerating my presence because I controlled their housing situation. "You know," I said conversationally, "Marcus always said that Christmas was about family. Real family, not just people who happen to be related by blood or marriage." Dad loved Christmas, Garrett agreed mechanically.
He did.
And he always said that family was about people who chose to love and support each other, especially during difficult times. Peyton nodded, but she looked confused about where this conversation was heading. That's why it meant so much to him when people showed genuine kindness and respect to the people they claimed to love. I paused, looking around at their Christmas decorations. Unfortunately, he also witnessed what happened when people only showed kindness when it benefited them financially. Garrett shifted uncomfortably.
What do you mean by that?
"I mean that inviting someone to dinner because they control your rent isn't the same as inviting them because you genuinely want them there." The room went completely quiet. "For 8 years, you two made it crystal clear that I wasn't really part of this family. When Marcus died, and you thought you were inheriting everything, your first instinct was to throw coffee at me and tell me I belonged in the streets." "We apologized for that," Peyton said quickly, defensively. "You apologized because you found out I had money. You're including me in Christmas dinner because I control your housing. But neither of those actions came from genuine care or respect for me as a person." Garrett looked frustrated and trapped. "What do you want from us, Dottie? We're trying to be better people." "Are you? Or are you just trying to manage me so you can keep getting what you need?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "You know what I realized today?" I continued. "Marcus was absolutely right to test your character. Because even now, after everything that's happened, you still don't see me as a person worth respecting for my own sake. You see me as an obstacle to manage or a resource to exploit." I stood up to leave. "Starting February 1st, your rent will be $2,200. I'll also be selling this house in the spring, so you'll need to find new housing by May 31st. "You can't do this," Peyton exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "We signed a lease agreement. Your lease expires on April 30th. I'm not renewing it. But where will we go? Our credit is still damaged. That's not my problem anymore. You've had 8 months to prove that you could be decent human beings, and you've failed completely. We invited you to Christmas dinner. You invited me because I made it a condition of keeping your rent low. There's a fundamental difference." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "Emma, Tyler, would you like to come stay with me sometimes? My house has a pool, and you're welcome anytime." Both kids looked up excitedly from their toys. "Really? Really? You can visit whenever your parents say it's okay." As I left that house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace with my decisions. Marcus had left me the tools to demand respect, and I'd used them wisely. Garrett and Peyton had been given multiple chances to show genuine change, and they'd chosen manipulation and resentment instead. Over the next few months, they scrambled desperately to find new housing. Their credit was still poor, and their eviction record made things incredibly difficult. They eventually found a small apartment in a less desirable part of town, but they had to pay a massive deposit, and their rent was higher than what they'd been paying me. Emma and Tyler started spending weekends with me regularly. Without their parents' negative influence, they were absolutely delightful kids, smart, funny, and genuinely kind. They helped me in the garden, learned to play chess, and we cooked together every Sunday afternoon. In July 2025, something completely unexpected happened. Garrett called me. "Dottie, I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" "You were right. About everything. Peyton and we never really changed deep down. We just got better at hiding who we truly are." I was genuinely surprised by his honesty. What makes you say that? Because we've been living in this terrible apartment for 2 months, and all Peyton does is complain about you. She blames you for everything wrong in our lives. She can't see that we brought all of this on ourselves through our own actions. And what do you see? I see that my father was disappointed in me for 8 years, and I was too selfish and stubborn to notice. I see that you gave us chance after chance to be better people, and we wasted every single one of them. There was a long, thoughtful pause. Dottie, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you at all. But I want you to know that I'm genuinely grateful for what you did. Grateful? You showed me who I really was underneath all the excuses. And now I have a choice. I can stay this person, or I can actually change for real this time. 6 months later, Garrett started coming to our Sunday dinners. Not every week, but sometimes. He didn't ask for money or favors. He just spent quality time with his kids and tried to be a better father. Peyton never changed her attitude. She moved to another state in early 2026, leaving Emma and Tyler with Garrett full-time. The kids now live with their father part-time and spend school vacations with me. Today, as I'm sharing this story with all of you in March 2026, it's been almost 2 years since that awful day in the lawyer's office when my world turned upside down and then right side up again. Emma is 16 now and planning to study education in college, inspired by the teachers at the community center who showed her how much difference one caring adult can make in a child's life. Tyler is 18 and working part-time at the library where I used to work while finishing high school with honors, having learned the value of hard work and responsibility through his experiences over the past 2 years. Garrett has a steady job with a reputable construction company and a modest 2-bedroom apartment that he can actually afford. He's not wealthy by any means, but he pays his bills consistently and takes good care of his children when they're with him. More importantly, he treats people with genuine respect now, including me, and has learned that actions matter more than words when it comes to building real relationships. As for me, I'm living the life Marcus wanted me to have, and every day I feel grateful for his wisdom and foresight. I travel when I want to, visiting places Marcus and I always talked about seeing together. I help people who truly deserve help, funding scholarships and supporting local charities that make a real difference in our community. Most importantly, I spend my time with people who value me for who I am as a person, not what I can give them financially or what they think they can get from me. I've used Marcus's money thoughtfully to fund scholarships for kids who can't afford college, donated generously to the library where I used to work, and even bought the community center where Emma and Tyler first learned about volunteering and giving back. But the best part of my life is watching those 2 kids grow into amazing young adults. They're kind, hardworking, and generous, everything their grandfather would have wanted them to become. Sometimes people ask me if I was too harsh with Garrett and Peyton. They think I should have just forgiven them immediately and moved on without consequences. But I don't regret any of my decisions. Marcus was absolutely right. People don't change their fundamental character overnight. They only change their behavior temporarily when it benefits them. Real change takes time, genuine consequences, and a sincere desire to be better. Garrett needed to lose everything comfortable to understand what really mattered in life. He needed to face real consequences for his actions and choices. Most importantly, Emma and Tyler needed to see that treating people badly has serious results. If I'd just forgiven Garrett and Peyton immediately, if I'd bailed them out without making them face the results of their choices, what would that have taught those innocent children? That you can be cruel to people and get away with it as long as you say you're sorry afterward? Absolutely not. Some lessons can only be learned through difficulty. Marcus left me more than money and property. He left me the power to demand the respect I'd always deserved and the wisdom to use that power carefully and thoughtfully. He left me the tools to build a better family, one based on genuine love and mutual respect instead of obligation and potential inheritance. And he left me the complete freedom to live my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them financially. The coffee cup that Peyton threw at me in that lawyer's office shattered against the wall, but it also shattered the illusion that I was powerless in this situation. When the pieces settled and the hot liquid stopped dripping down the wall, I was still standing there, and I was stronger than anyone had imagined possible. That moment of violence and cruelty became the catalyst for everything that followed, the turning point where I stopped being a victim and started taking control of my own destiny. That's the real inheritance Marcus left me, not just money and assets and property, but the knowledge that I was worth so much more than the way his family had treated me for years. He gave me the tools to demand respect, but more importantly, he gave me the wisdom to use those tools carefully and thoughtfully, always keeping in mind what was truly important in life. Every morning when I wake up in my beautiful house, with Emma and Tyler laughing in the kitchen while they make breakfast before school, and Garrett stopping by for Sunday dinner with genuine appreciation and respect, I think about Marcus, and I smile with genuine happiness and contentment. The house is filled with warmth and love now, with family photos that include everyone and holiday celebrations where all are truly welcome. He kept his promise to me in ways I never expected. He made sure I'd be taken care of financially, protected from those who would take advantage of my kindness, and ultimately happy in a life surrounded by people who truly care about me. And I kept my promise to him, even though I didn't know I was making it at the time. I used his gift wisely, making decisions based on principle rather than emotion. I loved his grandchildren unconditionally, providing them with stability and guidance when their own parents couldn't. Most importantly, I showed his son what it really means to be a good person through my actions, not just my words, demonstrating that respect is earned through consistent behavior over time. The best revenge isn't cruelty or punishment. The best revenge is living well, on your own terms, with the people who truly deserve your love and respect. And I'm living very well indeed. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my situation? Do you think I was too harsh on Garrett and Peyton, or do you think they got exactly what they deserved? Drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this story, Her Real Stories has tons more incredible tales that will shock, inspire, and maybe even change how you think about family, money, and revenge. Check out our channel for more of our videos. Trust me, they'll blow your mind just as much as this one did. Thanks for staying with me until the very end. Remember, respect is earned through actions. Family is about love, not blood. And sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. I'll see you in the next story.